Hello and welcome to my review of Shadow and Bone. Unfortunately, unlike Fate the Winx Saga, I cannot do a comparison between Shadow and Bone, the miniseries on Netflix, and the source material, the Grisha trilogy, because while I definitely have read the first book, I read it almost 10 years ago, around the time it first came out, but I have not read the other two books in the Grisha trilogy, nor have I read any of the books from the second trilogy. So while I do have some vague general memories of the first book, I am basically going into this series blind. If you would like me to read all of the books and then do a compare and contrast between the books and the show, do let me know. But until then, I'll be moving on to the spoiler-free review. While the Netflix adaptation of Shadow and Bone was marketed as sort of the next Game of Thrones in the way that I feel a lot of new fantasy shows are being marketed as, if memory serves, when the books came out, they were marketed as more of a Harry Potter meets the Hunger Games. And I feel that comparison is more apt compared to the Game of Thrones comparison. However, that's not to say the Game of Thrones comparison isn't completely unfounded. Shadow and Bone has a few different interconnecting storylines that are either thematically or narratively connected in some way, but they hardly ever actually cross paths. And while Shadow and Bone's source material is a young adult series, the Netflix adaptation isn't afraid to occasionally show some more explicit violence a la what Game of Thrones is known for. However, if you're looking for a true guts and glory show with a lot of mature violence like what Game of Thrones has, Shadow and Bone will disappoint you because the explicit violence of the show is almost exclusively isolated to the first two episodes. And even then, the violence is nowhere near as explicit as what Game of Thrones gets to. This is still a young adult show. So I would actually recommend this show to more than just YA fans. While Shadow and Bone doesn't completely escape some of the trappings and cliches of YA, the way this miniseries presents the characters and the storyline kind of separates itself a little bit from some of these young adult tropes. So anyways, on to the story. So like I said in the spoiler-free review, Shadow and Bone has a few different interconnecting stories they kind of jump back and forth from. We have the A plot with Alina and Mal, who are part of the Ravkin army, and the B plot with Kaz, Inej, and Jesper. Now, I actually don't remember these three characters from the first book. I have a sneaking suspicion they're characters from later books, because even with only my knowledge of the first book, I can very much tell from the way they've structured this first season that they've kind of tailored the original events of the first book to better fit everything that happens in the books that have come since. There is also a C plot that develops in the middle-ish to end-ish of the first season between Nina, a heartrender Grisha, and Matthias, a Druskella, who hunts Grisha and believes them to be witches. So Alina and Mal are tasked with crossing the Fold, which is a very common YA trope. It is the barrier we cannot cross, it is the danger zone, it is the forbidden forest. So usually how the barrier we cannot cross is used in fiction is to create conflict, and technically the Fold is used to create conflict, but how Shadow and Bone subverts the trope of the barrier we cannot cross is that it only uses the barrier we cannot cross the way it's stereotypically used in fiction about 2 times. Usually the source of conflict comes from the plot contriving reasons for characters to continue re-entering the Fold in order to create a sense of danger and conflict. But while the Fold is used as a motivator in order to push the conflict of the storyline further, the reason why everybody wants Alina is because she can potentially get rid of the Fold, and that the Fold itself is a physical barrier in that it divides Ravka and creates all these logistical problems as to how people are able to transport themselves back and forth. The conflict the Fold creates is able to go beyond just the danger that the Fold itself presents. So anyways, long tangent about the Fold aside, in our A-plot, Alina Starkov is the Sun Summoner, our chosen one. She and Mal's story kind of start together. The first episode is very much dedicated to emphasizing how close their friendship is. But after it is discovered that Alina is the sun summoner, she and Mal get separated for pretty much the rest of the first season, with Alina going off to the little palace to hone her abilities now that she has discovered that she is a Grisha and the sun summoner, while Mal is left behind with the Ravkin army, and later, in order to get to Alina, attempts to pursue the stag with these two guys? Like I said, my memory of the first book is very sketchy, but even without having read any of the other books, I can very much tell that the writers or producers wanted to pay homage to a storyline from the book that was elaborated more upon in the book, but they didn't have time for in the show. So Alina at the little palace not only begins to develop her powers as the sun summoner, but also develops her relationship with General Kerrigan, the leader of the Grisha. Again, if memory serves, this memory being like 8 years old, having read the book when I was in like high school, the romance between Alina and General Kerrigan progressed a lot faster in the book compared to how it progresses in the show. I at least distinctly remember Alina and General Kerrigan kissing a lot earlier in the book compared to when they kiss in the show, which is only just before Alina finds out that General Kerrigan is the secret bad guy. Because yes, General Kerrigan, aka the Shadow Summoner, aka the Darkling, is our secret bad guy. And this plot twist, I think, was played out a lot better in the show as compared to the book. In the book, General Kerrigan's actual title is the Darkling, whereas in the show, he is almost exclusively referred to as General Kerrigan and sometimes the Shadows. I believe they refer to him as the Darkling once or twice, but it's only ever as an insult. Again, General Kerrigan is not completely free from all of the YA tropes, like he wears all black. He wants Alina to also wear all black, even though she's got that cute blue jacket with the yellow trim. And he has shadow powers. It's set up earlier that the person who created the fold was a Grisha known as the Black Heretic, and originally General Kerrigan is set up to be a quote-unquote descendant of the Black Heretic, but it is revealed that he actually is just the Black Heretic and is actually immortal. Along with his mother, Bagra, who, while Alina is at the little palace, tries to train her in order to be able to take on General Kerrigan. The dynamic between General Kerrigan and his mom, Bagra, is very interesting because while it's very clear that Bagra disagrees with what General Kerrigan has done in the past and what he's trying to accomplish in the present, she never tries to directly confront him in any significant way. Like, there's no head-to-head magic battle between them, even though they both have Grisha powers. And instead, Bagra always seems to be trying to subvert General Kerrigan from the shadows. Like, both Bagra and General Kerrigan are residing at the little palace, and Bagra has been aware of General Kerrigan and what his kind of plans are for a long time. She has her own set of Grisha spies, but of course she waits till the absolute last minute to finally warn Alina in plain terms of what General Kerrigan is and what his true intentions are. While at the little palace, Alina starts having dreams about a stag. Certain animals, including the stag, Grisha can use as amplifiers to increase their power. In Mal's sort of B-plot, he finds Alina's sketches of the stag and goes after the stag in order to get back in contact with her, because unbeknownst to both of them, neither of their letters are getting through to each other because of General Kerrigan. Mal locates the stag and then tries to go to the little palace in order to inform her about it. Mal is intercepted not by General Kerrigan, although he does seem hesitant to let Mal see Alina. He is intercepted by one of Bagra's Grisha, because Bagra knows that General Kerrigan is using Alina to try to get to the stag first. So Alina and Mal do eventually reunite in either the second to last episode or the episode before that in order to hunt down the stag. They find the stag. Up until this point, Alina has been told that in order to increase a Grisha's power through the mythical animal, the animal has to be killed by the Grisha. But Alina can't kill the stag, and so instead she tries to bond with the stag, but General Kerrigan kills the stag because, surprise, secret bad guy. General Kerrigan then uses the stag's antlers to control Alina's power. I do not remember how this was explained in the book or if it was set up early on, but in the show, this kind of comes out of nowhere. It's explained that these mythical animals can amplify a Grisha's power, but there was no mention of being able to control another Grisha, I don't think. There might have been some vague allusion to the animals can do other mystical things, whatever, but I don't think there was any kind of explicit, like, explanation of a part of the animal, like an actual physical part of the animal being able to control other Grisha or allowing one Grisha to control another Grisha. So depending on your suspension of disbelief, this might be just kind of a hand wave. It's the third act. We gotta throw in some kind of another weird magical thing. Or you're gonna be like me and be like, huh? It also does not help from my personal standpoint that prosthetic for the stag antlers looks gnarly. I'm a big horror person, but like the idea of like foreign objects sticking out of skin is So now with the stag's antlers giving General Kerrigan control over Alina's powers, he reveals his true intentions of using the fold instead of completely destroying it, of expanding it however he likes in order to expand his own power. But Alina, with the help of Mal and the characters from the B-plot, I will get to them, I promise, stop General Kerrigan and save the day. I mean, not everything is completely resolved. They're clearly setting stuff up for season 2. They kind of made it look like General Kerrigan died during the final battle. Although I know for me personally, I was not fooled at all. It's very much the rule of if there is no body, that person is definitely still alive. And even not considering that General Kerrigan is still alive, Alina and Mal are still on the run, both from the Druskella, who want Alina dead, and this general military guy who wants to rebel against the king of Ravka, who also wants Alina dead because I believe the fold is a military advantage for him, and so destroying the fold would take away his advantage. But yes, that is the A plot. The B plot, which includes Kaz, Inej, and Jesper trying to kidnap Alina in order to claim the Emilian Kruger ransom on her, is definitely the more interesting of the two storylines. Alina's storyline is definitely the more stereotypical YA coming-of-age story, whereas because Jesper, Kaz, and Inej are not kind of the main characters, they get to be a little more amoral. They're definitely the Han Solo and Chewbacca to Alina's Luke Skywalker. So Kaz, Jesper, and Inej are a kind of group of criminals who plan to kidnap Alina at the Little Palace, but even to get to the Little Palace from where they are in the city of Ketterdam, they have to cross the fold. And this conflict of them even just finding a way to cross the fold takes up a decent chunk of their story plot. I do like how much time they focus on having this group just finding a way to cross the fold in general, because it emphasizes how much the fold is an inconvenience not just to the Ravkan military, but for regular people. But the trio do eventually make it across the fold with a character called the Conductor, and are able to sneak into the Little Palace by disguising themselves as performers for the Winter Fete. There are several twists and turns and obstacles that get in their way as they try to both get into the Little Palace and kidnap Alina, but the eventual conclusion of this story arc is that they unintentionally help Alina escape the Little Palace after she finds out that General Kerrigan is the secret bad guy. They, however, don't stay with Alina for that long. One of their members, Inej, is a follower of the in-universe religion that believes the Sun Summoner is a saint, and so Inej makes the decision to let Alina go. And after that, the trio storyline kind of falls by the wayside until they reunite with Alina and, of course, meet Mal in order to help stop General Kerrigan during the finale. I definitely liked this storyline the most in the show, not just the storyline in general, but also the dynamic between the trio. I'll get more in depth about my opinions of the characters in the character section, but Jesper is like my favorite character, Inej is gorgeous, and Kaz is there. So I should probably touch upon what I would call the C plot of the show with Nina and Matthias. I call this the C plot because it's the least connected to the main plot. Neither of these characters ever really connect with any of the main cast. I feel the storyline, if anything, was kind of just used to emphasize the prejudices the Druskella have against the Grisha, and maybe to set something up for season 2. Like I said, I've only ever read the very first book, so I have no idea where this is going from this point on. But they get the most screen time more towards the end of the season as opposed to the beginning, so that's what makes me think that maybe this is some kind of setup for season 2. But okay, on to the characters. So Alina Starkov is kind of our milquetoast main character. She's got kind of two main conflicts going on. The main conflict is her choosing between her dedication to her friend Mal and her new responsibilities as the Sun Summoner, and her secondary conflict is being able to truly believe in herself in order to truly unlock her powers as the Sun Summoner. These two conflicts actually kind of work in tandem with each other, because the first conflict kind of comes crashing down after it's revealed that General Kerrigan is a secret bad guy, has really been manipulating Alina the whole time, but Alina is able to stand against him in the finale because at this point she has kind of discovered herself and is able to have that metaphorical coming of age moment that unlocks her true potential as the Sun Summoner. So yes, even though her story is something we've seen particularly in young adult fantasy many times before, I think it's executed very well. So even if you are a little tired of this trope, if you would still appreciate seeing something like this done well, I think you would still enjoy Alina's story. Mal is also a little bit on the bland side. He is our good boy. He is our best boy. I understand now why the fandom is like so attached to Mal. He is very much like the good boy love interest who is very dedicated to the main character, who will do anything for the main character and is very wholesome. Mal also gets seriously injured twice over the course of the first season, so I think it also shows that Mal, especially after Alina is revealed to be the Sun Summoner, Mal is kind of the more vulnerable one of the two. Now, General Kerrigan, aka the Shadow Summoner, aka the Darkling, aka our secret bad guy. Like I said earlier, I am pretty sure they toned down the romance between General Kerrigan and Alina from the books, and if that's true, I appreciate that. The romance between Alina and General Kerrigan has the Twilight problem of the infinitely older immortal man with the teenage girl, on top of the fact that General Kerrigan is our secret bad guy, and he's really just been manipulating her for his own ends. And I could easily have seen this turning into like a love triangle scenario. I mean, it really was teased as a love triangle scenario in the midpoint of the show, with Alina being conflicted between Mal and General Kerrigan. But at least by the end of the show clearly has Alina choosing Mal. Like, Mal is the clear choice in the show's interpretation. There are also some side characters from the A-plot that I should mention really quick. There's Genya, who is a rare type of Grisha called a tailor that is basically Alina's confidant in the little palace. She is really a spy for General Kerrigan, although she tries to maintain her friendship with Alina regardless, but it doesn't end up really working out. And then there's Zoya, a squalor Grisha. She at first serves as a bully towards Alina and also as a rival love interest for General Kerrigan, but she actually ends up siding with Alina during the finale. So after that, we have our trio. Kaz is the ringleader. I think it's his role as the leader of a band of criminals, but I expected the actor to be older, I think. But then again, this is also YA, where literally everyone's a teenager. But like I said earlier, for me personally, Kaz is just kind of there. I don't know how the fandom feels about him. I know he was used in a lot of the marketing for the show, but he's just the cold, calculating criminal ringmaster who's really got a heart of gold on the inside. I couldn't quite tell if the relationship between him and Inej was hinting at romance or not, but if it is, Inej can do better. Speaking of Inej, She's gorgeous. I am simping for this actor so hard. You have no idea. Well, okay, maybe you have an idea. She does have her own conflict, both with kidnapping Alina versus following her faith, as well as her faith not allowing for her to kill anybody despite, you know, being a criminal. But I think I couldn't quite connect with Inej as a character because even though conflicts are set up for her, within the function of the story, she is mostly kind of used more as like a deus ex machina to continue the plot forward with the trio. And then there's Jesper, my favorite character. Tonally, Shadow and Bone generally is a pretty serious show that takes itself pretty seriously. There really is not a lot of wink and nod. The characters don't really quip all that much with each other, at least not in the comedic sense. But whenever the show just needs some comedic relief, just needs a little bit of a lightening of the tone, like, he brings it, man. And unlike Bridgerton, there is no maybe this, maybe that over whether or not Jesper is gay. While Jesper doesn't have a consistent love interest in this first season, he does sleep with a guy to steal a horse. So there is also Nina and Matthias from the C plot. Again, there's not really much to say about these two because there's not much to say about their storyline in general. Nina is a heartrender Grisha. She's kind of the stereotypical like flirty spy, since she is a spy for General Kerrigan, and then Matthias is a Druskella, one of the elite soldiers of the Fjorda. They believe all Grisha are evil witches, but over the course of Nina and Matthias's storyline, they are able to kind of come to an understanding about each other as people, and that also blooms into romantic interest. So yeah, that's all the characters. Wow. I should probably comment on the costumes. In Fate the Winx Saga and in Bridgerton, I didn't talk about the costumes at all. Costumes really just aren't my specialty. It's not my area of expertise. But I have to say, I really love the world that they've set up in the show visually, and particularly the costumes. I mentioned the keftas earlier that the Grisha wear. Another personal favorite of mine is Alina's dress from the finale. And even beyond the costumes, the world itself, right from the beginning, really sucked me in. I really liked the idea of there still being magic and it still being a fantasy world, but there's also guns, and the aesthetic is, like I said, not a costume history person, but I think it's like ballpark World War I era Russia. I just thought it was a super interesting setting for a young adult fantasy. I also really love the diversity in the show. I actually don't remember Alina being half Shu in the book. Like, I think it was speculated about at some point, but in the show, it's made much more explicit. But even if she was half Shu in the book, I could easily have seen this going the way of Fate the Winx Saga, eliminating some of the side characters of color and only having the one tokenized person of color. But no, there are a lot of Asians in this show. I think particularly because of the fictional Shu and Suli races. Okay, so there's like this inside joke with my family where whenever my dad is like watching a show and there's like an Asian person on screen, even for like a second, he'll be like, "Oh, an Asian." And I did not watch the show with my dad, but I kind of wish I had, because then half of the show would be him going, "Ooh, look, an Asian. Ooh, Asian. Asian." Okay. So I think on that note, that is my cue to wrap up this review. In general, I really liked Shadow and Bone. I feel, particularly towards the midpoint of the first season, it got a little jumbled with the multiple storylines, and some of the characters kind of fall into bland YA tropes, but other than that, I really don't have any complaints. I am literally recommending the show to like all my friends to try to get them to watch it. And again, if you would like me to read the entire Grisha trilogy and the sequel trilogy, do let me know. But other than that, I cannot wait for season 2. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Also, I'm sorry I didn't do like a costume or anything for this review. I have nothing in my closet that even vaguely resembles anything from Shadow and Bone. Like, in theory, I could wear the jacket I wore for my Emily in Paris review to try to do a Kaz-inspired look, but one, I didn't want to be using the same piece of clothing 2 reviews in a row. And 2, it would be a really incomplete Kaz look, because the coat is kind of really all I have. Also, that coat is a winter coat that I got when I moved to the East Coast for school, and I'm in California right now. Filming the Emily in Paris review in that coat was... yeah, I don't think I'll be doing that again for a while. But yes, thank you. Thank you. Oh my god, I'm so loopy. I will see you next time.